Hello and namaskar everybody from India, the state of Assam. I would like to read out my paper, but before that, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Children's Literature Association. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So the title of my paper is Undercurrents of Queer Ecology in Julie Ann Peters' Grl2grl. It's a collection of short stories, 10 short stories. But before that, I would like to draw your attention upon the concept of queer ecology. So before delving deeper into the text, it is required to comprehend the notion of queer ecology at the outset. This notion is a recent phenomenon and still in the progress of shaping itself because authors and critics have propagated various trajectories and discourses to look at this aspect theoretically. However, Wendy Aarons writes in Queer Ecology, Contemporary Plays that this term, I quote, is a mode of eco-criticism that challenges a conventional binary thinking about humans and nature by observing that nature, because it does not draw firm, bright boundaries between humans and non-humans, is essentially queer, I unquote. It can be assumed that treating non-humans as humans and as equal seems to be the domain of queer ecology as understood from Wendy's analysis. Catriona Sandilands writes in Keywords for Environmental Studies, I quote, "The term queer ecology refers to a loose interdisciplinary constellation of practices that aim in different ways to disrupt prevailing heterosexist discursive and institutional articulations of sexuality and nature." So as observed from these critical opinions, queer ecology is yet to gain attention in literature and academia as far as children's and young adult literature are concerned. So Grl2grl is a young, coming to the text, Grl2grl is a young adult collection of short fiction about teenage girls who, after stepping to the threshold of discovering sexuality, realizes how they are different from others. This othering by the narrator has also resulted in giving more privilege of self-sexuality than that of other secondary human characters. This privilege over the other itself implies an imbalance in the nature of looking at the social environment, which seems to be polluted with heterosexist beliefs and ideologies. However, from these observations by critics, it is also evident that queer ecology deals with looking at sex and sexuality through the lenses of environment. Problems in the text. Grl2grl, published in 2007, has been authored by the award-winning writer Julie Ann Peters, who writes for young adults. This collection has 10 short fiction in first-person voice. Peters' narrators are confined to adolescent girls who discover an identity embedded in their newfound sexuality. The narrative voices seems to foreground female tone as more dominant than the male voice, due to which the environmental equilibrium is disrupted. Complexity and contrasts in the depiction of lesbianism, teenagehood, raw emotions, and interconnectedness with non-human elements somewhat unravel the uniqueness in queer ecology. Somewhat Peters tend to render that within the spectrum of lesbianism, nature of every individual narrated do not resonate one another in terms of their emotional growth, experience, despite belonging to the same sex and sexuality. What is most common is a girl voices her own first-hand experience of becoming a lesbian without even realizing, as if this is a natural process of growth and development. So the objective of my paper is to investigate lesbian lives of teenagers from the ecological perspective. And in this respect, the human and non-human relations have drawn a contrasting picture connected with the physical environment. The interactions among the humans indicate that home may not always be the safe haven to dwell. Due to this reason, displacement from one's habitat seems another factor that reveals about the inadequacies and unsettledness of human nature. Due to this reason, the concept of home becomes a crucial phenomenon. However, the focus is on the surrounding environment of adolescent girls who share same-sex relationships. So the hypothesis of the paper, when Peters looks back at queerness as a response of nature towards culture, which is associated with a social environment and is at a continuous state of flux. It has been found that the socio-cultural environment that Peters has constructed poses a threat to queer ecology, which is a major concern in the study. Since sexuality and sexual preferences are dynamic in nature, as young adults tend to explore and experiment during their growth period, it fails to reach at a stasis for individuals belonging to the same sex, that is, female, and sexuality as lesbians. So, here goes the analysis of my paper, How Queer Ecology, as a response to this question that how queer ecology can be identified or misidentified in the text. So the socio-cultural environment that Peters has constructed poses a challenge to humanity, mainly because privilege of heteronormativity is given over homosexuality. Now, tomorrow is another day. Okay, so that's another short fiction in the collection that has been written in the format of virtual chatting, popularly perceived as IM or instant messaging technology. This gives a clear indication of challenging the natural human space and taking refuge in the virtual space far away from nature and natural environment, which is her family. For instance, initially Hayley has been undergoing a heartbreak phase due to her breakup with her girlfriend, Dylan. A faceless girl on the internet by the name of Ceylon, with her chat ID as Black Venus, appears to her rescue. Hayley realizes much later about the tactics of Ceylon, drawing attention from girls who are suffering from heartbreaks using different pseudonyms, which is most common in dating websites. Eventually, Hayley is relieved from her past pain. This narrative clearly indicates that family or support group space is replaced by the chat room with faceless, clueless, and unknown chatters. It may be equally asserted from this narrative that virtual environment has more to do with psychological space than physical. When she's not online, she tends to feel either lonely or miserable. The computer screen becomes her only private space where she could speak her heart out. This narrative asserts the dynamics of emotional phase that most teenagers experience. The virtual space becomes Hayley's home inside her physical home, where she resides with her parents. Peters does not allow her protagonist to tell about the latter's associations with the physical environment, except an instance with her father after Ceylon disappears. A contrasting picture of the virtual and physical environment is most realized if Ceylon's brief intervention and her father's care are compared. This fiction also hints at occupancy of virtual and technological world over nature, which can be an attempt to displace young adults from natural environment. For instance, in Stone Cold Butch, Cammie's vulnerability seems evident when her father sexually abuses her. It has resulted to her instability in relationships, and every time she connects with a girl of her choice, she also dispels hatred and guilt towards herself. For instance, when she encounters with Tanya, she narrates, I quote from the text, I wanted her to think I was bad, hostile. Same way I need him to react, to not want to touch me ever again, to be afraid, because maybe I looked like a guy now that would repulse him. I'd look strong, able to resist, I unquote. This short narrative depicts Cammie's traumatic experiences from the past and her present relationships. Clearly, as seen from queer ecological perspectives, Peters has built a deformed socio-cultural environment which has visible aberrations concerning human emotions and relationships, especially of adolescent girls. Another instance is the short fiction Boy, titled Boy, B-O-I. Eva is born a girl but feels and imagines herself as a boy. This makes her self-label as a trans boy. This teenage girl narrates her background as, I quote from the text, Mom dumped me on Grumps and Grumps. When I was a baby, that was fine. Mom was 19 and a junkie. Who needed that? She showed up to reclaim me years later, but it was too late, She'd cleaned up, got a new life, a new husband. She had a son now too. I have news for you, Mom. You got 2 sons, a bio boy and a trans boy, I unquote. Grumps and Grumps are the foster parents to Eva and Kevin. She never liked to be addressed as a girl. Rather, she preferred to be called as Vince. Her strong urge to become a boy made her fantasize with the fellas, and she indulges to buy an artificial rubber-made penis. The sensuality it made me feel confident and complete, I unquote. Eva feels powerful while wearing it, but the evening when she was molested by street boys while walking with her love interest, Nivaya, her vulnerability scarred her to the core of her identity. She hates to feel like a woman, but the boys made her feel like a helpless girl. On the other hand, Eva's feelings for Nivaya does not signify like lesbianism because the former never feels like a girl inside her. Her physical appearance is in contrast to what she is within or how she feels inside. However, the social environment would label her as lesbian due to her physical appearance. At this point, what goes against nature may be regarded as the artificial phallus that Eva wears most of the time. It may be asserted that if Eva experiences confidence in attempting to be a boy, she seems also equally vulnerable to her own desires. The heterosexist street boys mainly groped her because she was pretending to be a boy. This narrative also indicates that Eva is an undesired, unwanted child to an unwed mother. Though her birth has been a natural process, yet her life ahead does not receive a natural family atmosphere. Eva parts from her mother after birth to be later adopted by foster parents, Grams and Grams. As evident, Peters has constructed an unnatural background of this character, and later, when Eva turns into an adolescent, she realizes that she's not a girl from inside and that her sex assigned at birth does not match with how she feels. There are no traces of her biological parents. No doubt, she tells about her mother leaving her, but her father seems to be a clueless character in the narrative. Okay, another one is abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. This narrative interestingly speaks about the nature of procreation. It questions the nature of procreation and developing sexual urges among girls at the threshold of adolescence. The narrator and protagonist, Amy, discloses about her sexuality to her friend, Peyton, who initially responds to her. I quote from the text, "It isn't natural," Peyton said. "We can't ignore our biological urges. We are meant to procreate." We means the women, we girls. "We are meant to procreate and carry on the species." Procreate? Is Darwin required reading now? She just looked at me. So this was, Amy, who was questioning, gazing at her. This is an indication of criticizing scientific theories that mostly emphasized upon procreation and not about same-sex desire or such sexual traits, sexual urges. Peters might have signaled that biological urges, even if between same-sex, is part of human nature, and that every sexual urge does not have to be aimed at procreation. Now, coming to the conclusion of my paper, a quick conclusion. The circumstances and environment constructed by Peters in the collection poses a threat to queer ecology because each narrative is indicative of imbalance and conflict that causes chaos in human lives. And in this context, it is exclusively young adult girls. In terms of lesbian, adolescents have been positioned as the locus in the narratives. Peters has attempted to demonstrate both the darker and the brighter aspects of being a developing young adult girl and a lesbian at the same time. So the politics of circumstances has been woven around mostly fathers and boys in the society as the troublemakers that discriminate and devalue women, and especially if they are lesbian. So that's all for now, and thank you so much again for giving me this opportunity to speak and present my paper. Thank you and namaskar.